as usual, I am confused and frustrated about what I'm supposed to be doing with myself. I have spent a lot of time reading and thinking about uh, occult and spiritual practices, philosophies, methods, in the hopes of having a better understanding of how to be happy, healthy, wise, good. And yet, in some ways, I feel more burdened and more conflicted than ever. Uh, It's hard to know where where I fit as far as how other people are feeling. It seems that there's many people in the world that are feeling very conflicted and torn and having a hard time with things. And it seems that those are the people, well, again, it's hard to know exactly, but it seems that some people retreat to safe spaces of ideology, and that they feel comfortable, or more comfortable at least, aligning their thoughts with the consensus narrative. I think that's kind of obvious. Seems obvious to me that, that's what happens, that it is more difficult to challenge things and to kind of carve out your own path in your own niche. um, it becomes even so difficult to talk about, because it's so nuanced. I use that word so often, but I guess I don't have a better one, where when we drill down on things, which I think is what we should do if we're being conscientious, if we're wanting to be informed and make informed decisions, be wise, be be truly good, is is to be considerate, meaning having a broader perspective of all of the moving parts, or as much of the equation as possible. And that's a big undertaking, because it's never done. There's always more information, but there's also bad information. There's repetitive information, or in inaccurate information. And so to me, that's why the spiritual practice of developing my own consciousness, which would allow greater discernment. This is my belief, is that that capacity can be developed through things like meditation and introspection. Just time to consider one's own thoughts, to self reflect. And yet, as I've done that, I see that it just kind of keeps expanding, and the weight of things becomes heavier, because, and that that is the burden of knowing. And I think it's why people retreat to reductive approaches to understanding things. I find myself paralyzed sometimes. There's like a good paralysis, even. There's a stillness in trying to find that eye of the hurricane of the mind, of the world, finding this center, the stillness at the center, where there's actually no thoughts. And I I can achieve this from years of meditation, and and practice, I'm able to achieve this, and it's a beautiful thing. But it doesn't last forever. I mean, sometimes I wish it would, and I could just stay in that. But inevitably, I'm still having a human experience, and so I come out of that and come back to the world of things and thoughts. It's inevitable, and part of my dilemma and challenge is, do I want to participate in it, or do I want to retreat from it? Because the retreat, or it's not even, it doesn't feel like retreat so much when it feels more like a seeking for me. There's times when I want to retreat from the world. Definitely. That's for my whole life. And I think that has encouraged me to be a meditator, a spiritual seeker. That's my natural inclination, actually, is to, well, natural. I don't, I don't know. It's a combination, I'm sure, of nature and nurture, because I can easily see experiences that I've had that have incentivized me to want to retreat. But that doesn't, I don't think that happens for everyone. Not everybody responds in the same way to different things. So in Eastern philosophies, there is this kind of idea of loosening attachments, resisting the indulgence in the world, this appeal of things and thoughts. That the concept of samsara is that this this and Maya, this dream world that is addictive and will pull you out of this knowing place, this center of being, just being, into an identity that is an illusion and a sort of trap of the ego. And to me, that's quite evident. It's quite evident that the more people engage with the world, like really get into money and politics and possessions and all this identity that kind of ossifies around one, that the ego wants to build and build this power in this world, that there's this loss of connection with the source within. I mean, probably a lot of people who are really into that would even say, "There's what's the source within?" They would discredit such a thing even, um, which is fine. I'm not even saying what they should do. My dilemma is what I should do, because and I think people who are similar to me that have more of this kind of spiritual um, inclination, I think sensitive people, intuitive people, artistic people feel more torn in this way, pulled in two directions. I guess the, the thing is that part of me also believes in a philosophy of that I'm not a victim of incarnation, that there must be a sort of reason or an impulse that created it, that created my life and this incarnation, whatever it is. It seems I'm kind of stuck here for now. And the attitude that I take is, I don't want to think of myself as being stuck in any kind of purgatory, anything like that, because it's gonna make it worse. It's gonna make things more difficult to have that perspective. I think having um, having the desire to be good, to improve oneself, to align oneself with higher ideals means being able to adjust one's own thoughts and and understand that we are not our thoughts. It's a kind of programming, but we can shape those and change those for greater benefit, not just of ourselves, but for others, because ultimately everything's connected. There's not clean delineation of self and other. What is self? As as you introspect, as you take the time to consider, you realize that it's all quite fuzzy and blurry and relative. One of the reasons I feel conflicted about all this is because as I do introspect, as I really do deepen my practice of these things that I believe are true, are effective. So, meditation and taking time, removing some of the distractions, addictions, these things, and that clear the way for inner listening, attunement to this kind of higher wisdom, then there's actually excitement to participate in the world. Well, there's there's an increase of there's an increase of frustration, agitation, anger, all these things once I come out of it. So I'm able to find a center of peace, but then it's like the that connection with that source, once I refocus back into the world of things, there's this greater intensity of feeling, of thought, in a good way, like in a way that I think most people would want. A feeling of vitality, but that feeling of vitality can also include feelings of anger and agitation and frustration, because which I often feel this frustration because I have all these great ideas, and then there's all this conflict. There seems to be a lot of resistance and obstacles, and that's a feeling I've had my whole life of having ideas about things, of how things could be better or different, and then feeling very, very frustrated about trying to implement them. Whether it be that there's no support, so I feel like I'm totally unsupported. That's been a big thing. I'm totally on my own, totally unsupported. Naysayers, negative things from people around me, especially my family. Um, and then just feeling like the world is just generally antagonistic and stupid. It's like, where do you begin? Where do you begin? Because you need to kind of have some foundation to build upon. But it's like building a sandcastle. You start and it's seems so exhausting to even just try and make any progress. Right? You need money often to invest in something. If nobody else sees the value in it and they're not willing to invest in it in some way, then you've got to work to do that. But when it's like three steps forward, two steps back, the progress is very slow, and then something can come and erode that progress. And that has happened to me as well. Um, I felt like I was making some really good progress on things. I had made personal sacrifices and worked really hard, worked several jobs, done all the things, and then taken risks um and then like the rug pulled out from under me, as it seems to have happened several times. It's like I can think of many examples, and they kind of haunt me, and I'm constantly having to push them to the side to have a positive attitude, to be able to go forward. Things where I did my best, I tried really hard and was totally unappreciated or was gaslit about things. And it's because, like, sometimes being that squeaky wheel, or that person who questions the authority, and then you get made an example of, or that's the feeling that I have had pretty consistently, um, of challenging the narrative, of challenging the status quo, of challenging the authority that is maintaining the rigid, outworn structure, the system that I observe as being able to be improved upon, especially when I worked in healthcare, when I worked with people with disabilities. It was painful to see how badly the administrators were managing things. And it was so ideological and not practical, really lacking in practicality, and so wasteful and so expensive. But don't dare question any of those grumpy old ladies. But then there's things that even within myself I feel conflicted. So, for example, I have this idea of having like a sleeping pod. And it's funny because I come across this like term, or I've seen this like this fear around a kind of matrix existence where we're living in pods. And yet, and I understand kind of where that fear is coming from, because yeah, that whole matrix scenario seems pretty creepy and scary. But at the same time, I would love a sleeping pod that has clean air and is quiet, and a place to like a artificial womb to sleep in. And and why not? Like, there's so many things that even in my own mind I feel conflicted about. And I don't know what that is. And it only increased the more the longer I live. I feel I feel, for example, even doing this, doing like creating, like I started making these videos. I started making videos. Well, I've been making videos for a long time, but I started publishing videos as a self-awareness kind of thing. I recognized that there was a desire to be heard and seen, which I think all everybody has. But also then, in when I was reviewing the videos, watching back, seeing myself, hearing my own voice, seeing how I presented myself, and just observing myself, that there was something useful in that as well. That there was a good practice too in this kind of translating from inner to outer. There is a For me, it feels painful, feels difficult or challenging, in because there's a reduction. There's a reduction in this kind of knowing, this feeling, sensing, awareness, into English words, and also this kind of fear of, well, it's not going to come out right, and then it's going to be misunderstood. A great apprehension about being misunderstood or misconstrued, or there's this vulnerability in putting oneself out on the internet. You have no idea who's observing it, how, especially nowadays, how it's being used. It can be re-edited, or taken out of context, or there's the world is so hostile. It seems, there's, which is fine. I also have this kind of warrior spirit where bring it. Like I actually sometimes feel like it would be nice to have actual physical conflict instead of this kind of fear of it. Like there would be something better in actually getting it out of the system. And I think in the past, men were more able to do this. And now it's reduced to playing video games or watching sports on TV, and neither of those I participate in. So I think that's another cause for frustration for me is the lack of physicality. And it's like like even to just be in nature, you got to get in your vehicle and you got to drive out of town. Every everything just feels so frustrating. I would love to live out in the countryside, but there's no rentals out there. You got to buy something. And to buy something, you got to have a job, right? You have to have, and those aren't out in those rural places. God, I could go on and on about all the different things that frustrate me. Um, but it's not actually what I want to do. I see it. It's only useful to talk about negative things, to complain, to talk about the difficult or painful thing. That I think there's a place for that. There absolutely is, because I mean other people can relate and feel like they're not alone in that. But I do think, for me at least, it is important to pivot to the solution. Like that's the goal. I don't want to just wallow. I can wallow. I feel deep and I feel pain on a regular basis. I feel I've struggled with mental health issues, whatever that is, my whole life, which I think is, that's even a kind of a gaslight, like it's my fault. No, it's not. It's my observation of a world that's really fucked up and unjust. And maybe that's by design. And maybe it's the reason I feel it more is because of something in me, um, Saturnian, Scorpionic, whatever. But I still think that um, the emphasis on the negative is never going to be satisfying for me. My whole agenda is to bridge the distance between the problem and the solution. I do want to feel the satisfaction of solving things, of achieving something. I don't know if the achievement is can be achieved just internally or not, or if it's a requirement that I participate in the world. I'd love to just live in a monastery in the mountains and just pray and meditate all day, and I'd be happy. I'd be fine, like spending a portion of the day doing manual labor that is required to keep the monastery going, growing food or chopping wood or whatever the hell. But that's not an option. That's not an option for me. I mean, maybe it exists somewhere. Maybe if I move to Russia or whatever. But again, this is part of the problem, is like there's my mind creates so many like kind of escapist fantasies. And I'm I'm conflicted about whether that's guidance or if it's escapism. Because there's so many of them, it's difficult to think, okay, yeah, that's really what I want to do. That's really my path to happiness. But what I think actually is the right approach is from the present moment making incremental progress forward. So it's that bridge is not built by this single leap into getting on a plane and moving to Russia. That's my that's my belief. I have taken big leaps at times, sold my place, quit my jobs, and had a interesting adventure, but it didn't last. The it didn't put me in a new timeline. It didn't create a new me. There was some changes. Um, I mean, it mostly destabilized my life and kind of increased the hardship, which on one hand I'm okay with. I'm okay with hardship, but what is difficult is the internal conflict, the internal frustration and self-doubt. And I just want to apply my intelligence and my capability. And I hate the waste of it. I hate the fact that I feel like I've made bad choices that have wasted my potential. That's to me what is most painful. For example, one of the things that is really painful is like the idea that I capitulated to the to lust. I think it's confusing. It's confusing to so for example, being identifying as being gay. When I look back, that is so it's so confusing. It's so complicated because there's many factors, but I think also there's kind of a con in it, right? In the time that I grew up in, it was a thing. It was a thing that was appealing as a rebellious teenager to be different, and it kind of was gaining in popularity in pop culture in during my adolescence. So there wasn't anybody that really said to me, "Don't do it." I mean, there was bigotry, but there wasn't any wisdom. There wasn't any adults that were actually trying to help me in any way sort it out or encourage me to actually get to the bottom of I didn't why I wasn't attracted to women or why I had an aversion to women, which is actually what it boils down to, I believe. And again, I don't I do blame my parents, but I don't want to blame them because that is not going to help me. It's not going to help me sort it out. Is to blame them because that their influence on me was a long time ago. Yes, it's foundational, but I know that I can change certain things. I can at least control my current behavior and I can be honest about what the internal dialogue is and the truth of the choices that I've made. And I think in evoking that and being honest about it, it will help me move forward. And I think that's something that's important. So I'm kind of answering my own question in this whole thing, which is I I think one of the useful attributes of this kind of recording and disclosure, the immediacy of recording oneself with the awareness that it will be published. There's a gravity and a weight that kind of draws out, demands something, which increases the likelihood of truthfulness, or I guess just a commitment to saying something. I've realized it doesn't. So there's this part of me that's very human ego part that I've got to return to until I'm dead. It's this work in progress. It's this story, and it's probably not who I ultimately am, but it's the work that I'm doing right now. It's the thing. It's the character that I'm working with and through while I'm here, and it needs to be kind of evoked. It needs to be embodied for it to at least fulfill certain requirements for development. I think that you can develop part of your being internally through meditation, through introspection, all this stuff. Really, it's hugely useful and important to do that. But also, you do need to act on it too. You do need to test it in the world of time and space. And again, that's a more difficult thing for me. It seems like some people just have no problem just like acting out in the world. But a lot of those people, they're I observe them as reckless and harmful and stupid. The ones that don't maybe not all of them. Some people are just amazing. Well, I don't know how self-aware they or introspective they are, but some people seem to have really refined that the wisdom that then they can act upon, and that they have this integrity, inner outer integrity. I think that is the goal, to have this congruency between inner and outer. And yeah, I mean, again, I think I'm answering my own question in a way, but when I think about that for myself, it's like there's so much that's inside for me. Where do I even begin to translate it into the world? Like, I think the things that appeal to me the most are because they're kind of abstract. So art, for example. But then I'm thinking like I'm not going to change the world with paintings. I'm not going to, maybe somebody would refute that, but or art. I mean, I think I think AI art and digital art are fascinating. I love playing with them, and not just like pushing the button and generating something. Anybody can do that, but that's like art in general. There's lots of art you can, the joke is of the paintings that are just like one color. Like, wow, it's there's a ton of art that's actually not very skillful, but I believe that amazing art can be made with digital and AI tools as well. So it all comes down to consciousness and intention, and that's what I feel I have a lot of. But then it's it becomes difficult in kind of birthing that baby because it's huge and it's it has so much to it. It has so many components to it, and it kind of has a lot of weight to it, a lot of morality, a lot of integrity that often conflicts with the world. It seems like the people who are successful in building companies and making money and being able to have traction in the world, they're the ones that are able to just like kind of disregard a lot of extraneous things. That they're really focused on that end goal of wealth and power. And I mean, that's my assessment. That's what it seems like. I guess I don't know any billionaires. I don't know any multimillionaires. Um, I'm not totally decided on how they are, but it seems to me like you have to be willing to put that as the highest priority, is that money and power, and not integrity around not exploiting nature, not harming the earth. We're not, for example, just on my street, there is a property that is a derelict building that the owner is just sitting on. I see this a lot with properties. Like, I don't understand how somebody can just let, well, a historic building just rot and not build something nice there, not clean it up. It's so ugly. It's an eyesore, and it's a place where people just squat and do drugs. And to me, that's so inconsiderate of the land owner, property owner. But he's probably just sitting on it and waiting for the property value to go up. I'm sure he is. So there's a lot of things that I have controversial opinions about, and I don't think they've not come from some external ideology, because often they're contradictory to the status quo. So they're things that I have developed an affinity for, an alignment with, based on my life experience, because my my views and perspective have changed over time. The more that I have cultivated my own awareness, my own assessment of things, self-educated, because that's been the case. I have avoided a lot of mainstream kind of approaches to learning and education, and that's been against the grain. That's been much more difficult. I did not go into post-secondary education. I didn't even initially complete high school because of being a black sheep, being somebody that questioned and challenged things, from my parents to teachers to the whole system. I've always been this person. I remember in grade 2 getting kicked out of class, stand in the hallway, made an example of, because of, I can't even remember what. I wasn't somebody that just acted out for no reason. It would have been something, honestly, I don't even remember why. I remember feeling feelings of, like, how to describe, just that things were unjust, that things were stupid. And I was sent out into the hallway. This is in grade 2. And I pulled the fire alarm. I'm not sure why I did, but it probably was out of a sense of frustration of, like, fuck you. And of course, that escalated things. I got even more trouble. But I remember at a young age, I remember an event in grade 3 where I felt this incredible injustice, the way things were, and that there's nobody there to support me. There's, I can't ask for help of any kind, because I'm going to be misunderstood. I'm probably will be shamed for what I say. And I do believe that there's a kind of pattern, that I don't live in the same reality necessarily as everybody else. Like, that everybody maybe is there in their own kind of sub dimension. And I do believe in astrology as a finger pointing to the moon. It's maybe not be perfect or absolute or exact, but it is better than consensus reality that doesn't really delve into archetypes and these kind of forces. It is a it is a method of psychological analysis, a metaphysical uh, psychology. And that when I look at my chart as I have for many years, I see in it this pattern of kind of oppression, of hardship. And that's been a theme through my life. And it's not even that the details of my life that somebody might observe from the outside have been horrific. They haven't. They've been very difficult. But many people have had harder circumstances. The thing that I think is the thing that part of what makes it difficult is this kind of gray area of a lot of things. You know, for example, my parents always drilled into me this like how good I have it, how lucky I am, and you want something to cry about, I'll give you something to cry about. Bite the bullet, like toughen up. And yet they they had it very good. They had it better than I have, and they I think don't have the self awareness that I have, which this self awareness can increase suffering, I think. But that's not the end of it. And what I believe is beyond that is an up leveling of sorts. Beyond that, like the discomfort, actually, it's like Krishnamurti said, and I probably not get it exactly right, but it's not a measure of of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. Something like that. It's paraphrasing. A lot of people seem not to notice the dysfunction. And then the canaries in the coal mine, they get gaslit and told that they're complainers or they're malcontents. And you know, I see people that are making bad choices and kind of bringing it on themselves. And I have scrutinized myself to the nth degree my whole life, like because my well, I have Capricorn rising, I have Saturn aspecting my Sun, so those things could cause that. But also um, that my mom, for whatever reason, projected onto me this kind of martyr thing that she has, where you're not allowed to complain. You're not allowed. There's no room for feelings of emotional weakness, for lack of a better word, for sensitivity, because she grew up with a narcissistic mother who did not meet her emotional needs. So she kind of hardened, even though she's a sensitive person. Her response to that was to kind of indoctrinate me, being the firstborn, especially because she didn't treat my brother the same way. She coddled him. And I don't think it's entirely wrong. I don't think it should have come from my mother. It should have come from my father, that kind of structure, because it should have been combined with a teaching of a skill set of how to be strong in the world, what to do. But my mother never taught me that, other than very female oriented stuff like how to make the bed and how to clean the house. Though that was mixed because she wasn't necessarily super domestic either. It's kind of she did it begrudgingly. So um it's it's all very confusing, and I have resentment about that confusion, although I also have this clarification of how it could be better. And that even though earlier on in my life I was like this very left alternative, hippie minded person, Wiccan as a teenager, and vegetarian and long haired, piercings and stuff like that when I was young. Tree hugger for sure, environmentalist. And now I find myself aligning with a very conservative right wing approach. And it's not come about from indoctrination, it's come about from observation and understanding the nature of human society and behavior and consciousness. And I truly believe that the, the I mean, this is just basic, but men, boys need strong men. The world needs strong men who are typically what we consider masculine, which is kind of domineering, to set the boundaries, to set the rules, to set the structure. Men in politics, women in the kitchen. And this is not from biblical or whatever. I mean, it's interesting that it is in those places. It's in different cultures that have been around for a while. Maybe they figured out something. As we're seeing now, liberalism, white liberal women being like this toxic um, force in our world that's undermining actually things getting sorted out. Like in both Canada and the US, this kind of like victim mentality that is causing such conflict. I believe this suicidal empathy, as God Thad has talked about, this that that the Western uh, mindset capacity for empathy and this kind of academic philosophy that has emerged out of our high trust society, it only really works in our Western mindset when you have a high trust society. It does not work when you include people who um, are from a low trust society that do not have the same values. That that there's this exploitation happening of this trait of empathy, and that all of our structures have been undermined by a liberalism that is very toxic. There's so many people talking about how communism has killed more people than anything else. Um, and I'm always looking for the nuance, like, because I think that too quickly we just label things and reduce it. And I think that we obviously need to cooperate. Cooperation is important, but how do we do it? How do we cooperate? How do we build structures that take into consideration the fact that there are negative traits within the human psyche that, given the opportunity, will emerge? That there is a kind of animal nature that will exploit and harm other people given the chance. Not in everybody, but in enough that it can really undermine all the good faith, all the good intention. And that's why we have laws. That's why we have structures within society. Yes, it needs to be balanced. It can't be all rigid, all structure. I think anybody who takes the time to really delve into things in not just a purely academic way, but really a considerate way where they actually, instead of just being indoctrinated with this is the way it is, and because that is too reductive, right? All the academic approaches to things are actually too reductive. You need to weigh things, and there's not easy solutions necessarily. But so What I'm trying to get at, this premise, is that I believe that we need the structure of rules and government and society that recognizes nature, right? So recognizing, for example, that men are much better structure builders. And those structures hold spaces, that kind of negative space, negative, just not being derogatory, but just the antithesis of positive as a charge or a yang, yin and yang. So that structure, that male yang structure, rigid, upright, holds that negative space inside of it, that yin space. The walls of the castle create that sanctuary inside. The walls of the cell, the cells of our body, of every living thing, hold that wateriness inside, that fluidity inside. And that's that's just natural. That's how nature designs things. And we need to to continuously defer to nature, which is what we build everything on. All of life on this earth is sustained by nature, from the sun and plants, pretty much. The sun and water and plants doing their thing is the only reason any other life exists on the planet. So we need to build a structure taking that into account. Nature can also be very harsh, right? Where the weak things get eaten. But then there's balance to that, right? There's plants having their fruit, but they also have thorny spikes. There's there's all these counterbalances in nature. So obviously we need police to protect the vulnerable. We need strong men to defend vulnerable children and women from other dangerous elements, whether it be women or men or beasts or whatever. When we tell men that they need to be other than they are, as far as having aggressive tendencies, and again, it is so nuanced, because those aggressive tendencies on their own are not bad. It all depends on how they're applied, each situation. So instead of saying to men, you shouldn't be aggressive, you shouldn't be lusty, you shouldn't be um, angry, it's that we need to encourage individuals to be considerate, self aware, where they're thinking, this capacity of mine, how should I apply it in this moment? And that is something that takes a lot of deliberation and a lot of practice. And it helps if early on we get some good opportunities to learn, not trauma that undermines that. And for example, I feel I have not had the opportunity to be a strong man in the world because it was undermined by both my parents and the society that I grew up in. I was not encouraged to be strong. I was discouraged from being authentic. And the strong person in my life was my mother, the one who made the rules, who decided what was punishable and what was important. For her, housework, cleanliness, and order were important. It wasn't important that I learn how to be strong or tough. I mean, it was very confusing because it you know, the 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 toughness that was taught was be have no emotion. So it was really messed up. And I didn't even clearly understand that until I was about 40. I didn't even really have that insight about that messed up programming that I received from an early age. And even now, almost 10 years later, I'm still conflicted about things. I mean, I know I can't work this out with my parents. I can't resolve it with them. And I also realize that I have to kind of accept that they were fallible humans and they just received bad programming from their parents who received it from theirs and so on. But my desire is to break the chain of pain and somehow contribute to a better world because not doing so is painful. Not doing something with the suffering and pain that I've experienced is painful. I want to make it worth something. Like I want to somehow make it worthwhile because that's what I think it is all about for me. Like you climb up a mountain, you do this grueling thing for some reason. Otherwise, opt out. Like otherwise, if there's no purpose, if there's no reason, I'm okay with pain and enduring for a good reason. It's just like I look around, I'm like, what's the purpose? What's the reason? What am I suffering for? For me, it's not a wife and kids. That could have been the case if somebody advised me to not be gay, because I think that could have been an option. Because I think that, like in other cultures, marriage and children is a duty. It's not about entertainment as it's kind of shown to us in movies and TV and this kind of liberal approach to it. That it's as long as it feels good, stay with that person. They're an activity partner and they're there to pleasure you and be fun. And I think that's wrong. That's a very like late stage capitalism approach. That no, it's a duty to perpetuate the human race. That there's some obligation there. And then the way that you train that next generation is with a consideration of responsibility for maintaining society, passing on values that are about um, what works, not about what is fun or pleasant or convenient, but about what is practical. And what is practical is making sure that the fundamentals are taken care of. And then after that, there is music and dancing and partying and all that stuff. But you got to make sure that the fundamentals are there, which is hard work, self-sacrifice and discipline. And there's something very satisfying in that. And nowadays we're so inverted where it's like pleasure and entertainment are the most important thing. And all of the responsibility is gone. And the I've seen some really ridiculous examples of this. I mean, our world is really fucked up now. It's clear. Like there's 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 a real bad situation with the state of a lot of people's minds and behavior. And it feels like it requires something very extreme to correct it. And there's all this like using of this word fascism, but it's almost like that's what we need. We need like some kind of authoritarian regime to like take the wheel and steer us back from the edge of oblivion, because it's and maybe that, chaos out of order or order out of chaos is designed, but then again, I don't 100% believe that there's one single-minded group that is steering everything. I mean, if they're that brilliant, then maybe they should just have the wheel. Like, I think that there is orders, there is layers to it all, and there is steering. There is levels of coherent intelligence that are steering things, and it's not single from a single source, but it's it's a kind of larger orchestration. And I think ultimately there is a reason. I look at something like the law of one, the channeling stuff that talks about the harvest, and that makes sense to me, that there's these grand cycles, and that, you know the people, that there's, it's kind of an education process, and there's a graduation at the end of souls that have finally got it. um I don't know if I've gotten it, but seems I I try to not overestimate myself. I really, again, I think this Capricorn and Saturn influence, and Scorpio influence in my chart, it, or for whatever reason, I have this kind of, it's almost, it's somewhat caustic, I guess. It's this constant challenging of my own narrative, which has, I think, a good quality to it, but sometimes, it's been too much as well. It should be counterbalanced with some strength and purpose, and that could have been done with a stronger male influence in my life, and growing up in a stronger culture that says, here's some guidelines, here's some work for you to do. And like, the work path I was put on was one that I have completely lost faith in, the medical system. And it was in a very kind of feminine type of role of caregiving. And not that men shouldn't do that. I think that, um, there's certainly ways that men can be administrators of healing, I think, in a different way than women do. Some some sick people need more of a paternal approach. If somebody has some serious behavioral things where they're disregarding boundaries, like they have poor boundaries, or they're constantly, so say in dealing with people who are, um uh they have poor impulse control, or they're harmful to other people, then they need a more stern approach. When I was working in care, there were certainly people who were narcissistic and abusive, and the kind of feminine, gentle approach that really some sick people deserve, and would is good for them. Like, that's what you need and want mostly when you're sick and hurting, is that kind of nurturing. But some people who truly are malingerers, um, they need a more stern approach. yeah, there's not one shoe does not fit everyone. And this is again what I learned in hypnotherapy is that some people respond to a more maternal tone and approach, and some respond better to a more paternal approach. So I think the again, when we think about like a building a house, building anything, the foundation needs to be first principle, right? If the foundation is off, then everything else is off. And the foundation should be conservative, right? You don't want a jello foundation. You want something that is consistent and predictable and sturdy and solid and firm. Then you can have like the flag at the end of the flagpole that's waving around, right? You can have bells and whistles built on top of that. But we have undermined our foundation. For example, in Western countries, in Canada, allowing far too many people bringing in other cultures that do not assimilate and they do not conform to the culture that was here. And so there's conflict. Just past couple days in a nearby large city, the mayor calling for the federal government to intervene, that it's an emergency situation where there's um, Sikhs and Muslims fighting, shooting up each other's houses, and um, extortion. And this is essentially an imported problem from India. And racism is growing. And I'm myself feeling more racist every day when I see how many people from other countries are here. And I just walked by the immigration center, and this is funded by Canadian taxpayer dollars paying people to immigrate here, handing them money. And some people have shown that they're getting close to $90,000 a year, some of them. And if you have more kids, then you get more money paid for by the Canadian taxpayers. Like we're importing people who are competing with us and we're paying for it. This is just ridiculous. This is, this is, this will create racism. This will create hostility. It makes me feel hostile. I never was somebody that even had a moment of racist thought. And now I'm feeling it on a regular basis because I feel I feel financially very, very squeezed and out in the cold and concerned. So I think that it's mostly not these people's fault. It's the fault of the government. It's the fault of that foundational layer that, for whatever reason, is deciding to undermine our entire culture, our country, and our legal system. And again, is it by design so that they can create order out of chaos? I wouldn't be surprised. So this is again something that I see the problem, I also see solution. I see a lot of things that could be done. I'm not in a place to make any of those decisions, so I'm frustrated by, well, what can I do? What should I do? Oh, I'll just meditate and like pretend it doesn't exist. I mean, I can do that. I can do that, and sometimes that's really what I just want to do. 80% of the time, that's what I want to do. And if shit gets even worse, I just like I'm not clinging to this world. I feel like fuck this place, I'm out of here. But then this other part of me is like, well, maybe you're here to participate, and if only to feel my own power of creation, of contribution. There's something, there's something in that. There's something in the demand for pulling that energy from this other world of spirit that I feel more connected to, pulling it into this world and taking action, not for the fixing of the world even necessarily, but for that the development of that capacity to channel creative energy and intention. But it's but you have to kind of lust for life. You have to kind of lust for the results and really believe in them. And that to me is sometimes difficult because I'm like, nah, whatever. I mean, countries, what's that? Who cares? And eventually it will sort itself out. Like, yeah, maybe it'll all sink back into the mud because we let the mud people in. um, you know, that's that's what it feels like. Oh well. I mean, when I look at my parents and my grandparents, they didn't prevent it. They were just focused on their short term selfishness. And they didn't they didn't make sure to keep a culture going of their Scottish ancestry or their some yeah, and you know my parents weren't strong enough to instill in me any strong values. They I I I don't think they were even thinking. They were just operating from some premise that they were not putting a lot of thought into. I think the boomers were very self-centered generation. They probably got kind of co-opted and programmed and steered probably. But I know that during that time they could have learned meditation. They could have gone on that. There were people from that generation that did take a introspective path and did question things, and um, but my parents didn't, my grandparents didn't, and because of that, they 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 will die out. All of those ancestors have led to a dead end because both my brother and myself are gay. My brother did have a child, one, but the all of those people has narrowed and narrowed and narrowed and narrowed. And we see white people essentially have become a very small percentage of the world now. And unless we develop some very kind of dramatic approach, then probably be wiped out. That's just, I mean, maybe not entirely, but I don't know. It just, uh, I, it's something that I think it doesn't need to be an us or them thing. We can have islands of affinity. We could have places that just, if we just stopped with the ideological idea that we should all just be mixed together, We're all just the same. Men and women are the same. People of every race and ethnicity are the same. Let's just all mix it all together and it'll all be homogenized and it'll all be just the sameness. Bullshit. That's not how nature works. You don't see everything all mixed together in nature. You see differentiation. Yeah, there's overlap, but um it's not all evenly blended together. And there's competition and there's a kind of ruthlessness. There's not a, oh, yeah, I'll just surrender. There's adaptation and protection and and I mean even just you see dogs dog sitting for a friend and he's not been fixed and he wants to pee on everything because he's marking his territory. He's very domesticated. He's very long way from the wolf, but he still has this instinct of setting his territory and you can even see the way that he does the paw thing where he's marking with his scent with his paws, just the kind of impulse that he has, like, wow, it's mine. Don't don't even think about coming around here. This is this is not egotism. It's survival instinct, and it's like it's been guilt tripped out of Western men. And I am angry because I was raised by a woman who gaslit me and a man who was weak, who let that woman dominate the whole family, and instead he chose alcoholism. And his father was weak too. And that makes me angry because now I live in a world that is a mess. And I can't I I don't have any of the luxury that they had, don't have the financial abundance that they had, not based on my choices, but based on their choices. But I'm still thinking, okay, well, what do I need to do? Those weak men created hard times, and so now I have to be a hard man. And like to the point, it's getting to the point of brutality where not just hard, but brutal. It's it's getting to that point where people are going to be very, very angry and very desperate. Um, Maybe that's just the ebb and flow of things, but yeah, I have resentment about it because I have all this creativity that I would much rather build beautiful, useful things. In my mind, I have designs for like how cities should be laid out, how buildings could be more beautiful. Vastu Shastra, that's the kind of feng shui of Ayurveda, of the Vedas. I have designs in my mind of healing temples and things, but I can't do any of that because I don't have the financial resources. I don't have any support for that. I'm reduced to thinking about survival. And that is ridiculous, being that I'm fourth generation Canadian and my ancestors had all of the opportunity and abundance and wealth, and none of it has come to me. Not cultural, not educational, not resource, none of it. I'm essentially in my own country behind immigrants who are just arriving. And that's a bit frustrating.